All right, Wolfpack Nation. On today's episode, we will be doing a huge dive in with Justin Williams of the Wolfpacker. We'll be talking football, basketball, NCAA state athletics, you name it, we're going to be talking about it. So make sure to stick around. Hope you all enjoy. So with that being said, let's go and get this thing started. What's going on, Wolfpack Nation? This is Layton Smith and Megan Adams from Tuffy Talk here with Justin Williams from the Wolfpacker. Justin, thanks so much for coming in, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, fellas, for having me on. I was looking at your YouTube channel. I think I'm the first media member, the first guy that doesn't dribble a basketball or tackle anybody at Carter Finley Stadium to be on the show. So it's quite an honor.
That means you're setting the bar. So
yeah, we'll
no
send
pressure.
you a plaque and everything you can put on your wall. And
yeah, you never know. We'll send you a piece of paper in the mail. So
maybe one of those hats, man. Those are pretty sweet.
Yeah. We'll have to hook that up. So for those who are tuning in, so basically what we're going to kind of do is we're going to kind of format this as true or false questions, and keep in mind that these are not necessarily one of our opinions. These are more of just conversation topics, and we're going to kind of basically give our opinion in terms of if we think that all of these that the whole statement is going to happen here in the future, or if we think that only part of it will happen. Just kind of good conversation topics, and we'll kind of roll from there. So the first question, or the first true or false statement, I guess is the better way to say it, is, so NC State will never match UNC on the football class rankings, but they will make up for it by bringing in top tier transfers and top tier coaching staff to develop players.
Well, I think that's definitely false. I mean, never is a long time, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Mac Brown, he's a good coach, but they call it death and taxes for a reason. We've all got an expiration date. And Max really, resurged the recruiting over there. But, there was a while where NC State was actually kicking UNC's butt on the recruiting trail. It wasn't that long ago. Now, to your point about developing talent, you see that NC State has a record of success for developing talent. Dave Doran has been able to develop these guys into year after year creating pros, whether it be on the defensive line or with quarterbacks. So, I would take most recruiting rankings with a grain of salt to begin with. I know I come from a rival site. We have our own set of recruiting rankings. We want you guys to look at them. It's a measuring stick, right? The preseason top 25 isn't always the top 25 at the end of the season. So it's just a subjective way to measure, one team's talent versus the other, one kid's talent versus the other. I wouldn't take a whole lot into it. It's going to be tough over the next probably couple years, I would say, to beat UNC in terms of a recruiting ranking team-wise. But as long as NC State's staying consistent, there's a ton of talent in the state of North Carolina. And like you kind of alluded to, the development is a lot more important than the number of stars that you're able to have next to your name when you come in and you sign with a program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to applaud that. That's a great answer. I totally agree. It's never is an absolute. It's a long time. We've had marginal rankings, like comparisons to them, and in some cases, I think we have had better. But yeah, I think Doran's done a great job now. I think Mac Brown has done a really good job too lately. I think when you look back at Fedora, I don't think that was as strong of competition in terms of developing talent, UNC versus NC State. But I think that's been one thing Doran has shown that he's really good at, is one, identifying talent, but then being able to make the most out of it. And like you mentioned, like if you guys don't have Wolfpacker subscriptions, definitely go subscribe to Wolfpacker. Really good stuff. But it's like Justin was saying, recruiting rankings, they're anybody's best educated guess on how talented someone's going to be going into a season or not, or going into their college career or not. And I mean, we've mentioned it before. We had Nate Irving on an interview, and he was a 2-star guy. We had Russell Wilson was a 2-star guy. Bradley Chubb was a 3-star. What did he come? He came in as a linebacker, so he was, I think. So it's all subjective. I think if I had to say, I'd agree, Justin. I think that's false.
Yeah. Yeah. And the 1.2 of that statement as well, that I don't know if either of you guys really touched on, is the transfers perspective, because it definitely does seem like, especially with this recruiting class coming in, that we've definitely had a uh, increase in terms of the not only the amount but also the quality of transfers that we've had coming in, like with the Corey Durden, and some also some defensive back help as well, with some transfers from Florida State. So I think that's going to be big, and it could be a new thing for us if it works out, for the better.
Yeah.
So it'll be
I think
interesting
you're going to see. I mean,
yeah.
like obviously, I know you probably have a lot more insight, a lot of this than we do, Justin. But just how the transfer market this year is going to be huge, and you've already seen that play out with you mentioned Durden coming in from Florida State, and so as well as Cyrus Fagan, the safety. It's a lot of that. Guys who can transfer for basically a free year of eligibility and not have to worry about sitting out. It's going to be really heavy transferring.
Oh, it's going to be the wild, wild west this year. I mean, you're seeing even more so in basketball. I know we're talking about football right now, but the transfer market is somewhere that this coaching staff is really putting an emphasis on. One of my colleagues, David Thompson at the Fayetteville Observer. I know what a name to be covering NC State, right? Yeah, but he actually just covers NC State football. He covers Duke basketball as well. But he wrote a story and talking to some of the coaching staff and how there's really an emphasis on the transfer market. They kind of look at it as, your recruits out of high school is kind of like the draft in NFL. And then the transfer market is kind of like free agency. So if you can make a splash one summer in the free agency market, maybe you don't have as good of a draft class as the rest of your division, but if you can, win the transfer market, you can win free agency, you're going to have just as good of a team, if not better, just because these are guys that have played at the college level. Right. You get a better understanding of what you're going to get day one from these guys that have played 3-4 years at a lower level of football versus, what you've seen at the high school level. Yeah. And just, before we leave the rankings debate, I would say, especially this year in 2021, take the rankings with a complete grain of salt, even more so than ever, just because you have to consider the impacts of COVID-19 on the evaluation process. A lot of these guys lost their senior season. That's a big, time to evaluate.
Or they're playing right now, or they're just playing right now.
Right. I mean, there's some guys playing some spring ball, but for the most part, you saw early enrollees, they go ahead and check in for the spring semester. They're already in Raleigh, so they didn't get a senior season. They haven't played football since fall of 2019, at least at the high school level. I'll give you one guy, for example, Jordan Poole. He's a 3-star linebacker on Rivals. I know one of our competitors has him as a 4-star, but he's a guy that has played most of his high school snaps as a running back. And so the evaluation process with a guy like him, I mean, losing his senior season of tape to be able to get some reps and create a huddle with a full year's worth of snaps at linebacker, that's really tough. So it's kind of they see the talent with this kid. They know he's got the athleticism. They know he comes from a good pool, coming out of there from West Stanley High School. But nonetheless, he's a guy that I could totally see having a ton of upside, even if he's quote unquote a 3-star, according to Rivals.
Yeah, right. I know that Coach Thunder was giving him big props in terms of how impressive he was. So absolutely. So now we'll transition to the next question. So or the next statement. So with the talent level and the ACC increasing with schools like UNC, Miami, Boston College on their way up being added, along with Clemson, it is now even more than ever importantly vital that Dorn gets an ACC championship appearance to prove that we are not falling behind.
I mean, that's the goal. I don't know if the question is true or false. Will he make an ACC championship appearance in, let's say, the next 5 years? Flip a coin.
Yeah. Well, more of necessarily, do you feel that it is vital that, we kind of prove that we are not falling behind with the other guys that are kind of really increasing rapidly?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of factors in that, right? So this year we're going to have divisions like we have for the past decade plus, the Atlantic and the Coastal. But that's something that, in my opinion, and what I've heard from some sources that have inside connections to the ACC, that's something that they're going to revisit, pretty soon. I wouldn't be surprised to see the divisions go away as soon as 2022 based on the success of, seeing a more round robin type schedule this year. I mean, there's no excuse that NC State shouldn't play Duke, once every 7 years.
And it was so fun this year playing some teams we don't ever play.
Right.
I loved it. I mean, I know I'm sure a lot of people did too.
Well, that was kind of the joke at the beginning of the season, right? NC State, wasn't as highly touted in the preseason. A lot of people picked them lower in the ACC standings. They get basically the Coastal Division round robin in the ACC play, and look what they did. They had an 8-4 season, have a program record 7 ACC wins. So it does show you that there is an unbalance in the divisions as long as Clemson's still around. I mean, it's Clemson and everyone else in the ACC. I mean, you can talk about UNC, you can talk about Miami, but we're really talking about, programs that everything has to go right for them to even have a chance of getting the 4th seed in the college football playoff. And then we're comparing that to Clemson, who's a perennial, college football powerhouse. They're going to be in the CFP conversation every year. They're going to contend for a national title every year. Now, I will say this fall might be the opportunity where maybe they can knock on Clemson's door in the Atlantic Division. You got the freshman Uyagagale. I don't know. I kind of butchered that pronunciation.
Good shot. Yeah.
He's one hell of a quarterback. I mean, look what he did against Notre Dame up in South Bend. But nonetheless, he's a guy that's only started, 1 or 2 games in his college career. That's a huge drop off from the number 1 pick of the draft, Trevor Lawrence. And Clemson's also got some other skill players by the name of Trevor Etienne and others that are going to be high NFL draft picks. They're going to fill their spots with 4 and 5 stars. I know that, but I'm saying, look at the returning talent of NC State. Look at the returning talent, particularly on the defensive end, and it gets you excited about maybe this team could knock on that door.
Yeah. Right. I know Thayer Thomas, in one of his interviews he recently had, he was saying, from his perspective, he would argue that, and he thinks it's arguable just in general, that State's maybe the closest team to knocking off Clemson consistently within the last few years compared to others in the ACC. And I totally agree. I've particularly been high on the fact that we got Durden. You lose McNeil, and he's, Pro Football Focus had him like number 2 defensive tackle or interior defensive lineman in the country, and you had a guy like Durden who, in terms of stars, you could argue he's like from a high school perspective, like a 5, 6, 7 star kind of guy, because already how good he is at the college level. So, there's not a lot of gaps being filled with NC State's roster coming back. That is exciting. I think in my opinion, going to your question, Leighton, do I think State needs to do that? I don't think they need. I want to say I don't think they need to do that, because I think where we are at perception as a university, anyways, a football program, I think Doran's building it very foundationally, very. I don't want to say slowly, but he's progressed steadily. And, we've been relatively pretty down as a football program over our overall history. And I still think that we've got a pretty good view in terms of relative to how bad we've been a lot of times. People still respect NC State's name. Yeah. I know Boston College had this last year or two with Hafley. That was good. You mentioned Boston College. I was kind of confused by Boston College. I don't view them as dominant.
No, but I mean, just comparing them to where they were under Steve Arduzzi and then going to where they were last year was like, whoa. I mean, geez. I mean, these guys.
It kind of caught your attention, yeah.
Like, whoa, if they keep this rate.
Right, yeah. But see, that's the thing. That's hard to do because nobody's Clemson right now. I mean,
no.
So I would say, do they have to? No. I would say if I had to give a hard line answer, I said no. But man, it's been 40 years, basically 30 years, whatever the number it is, since we won a title in the ACC. I can't remember exactly the year, but it's time. I feel like we're due, but you got to earn it. And what I would be excited about is the way state NCAA football is perceived right now. If we actually did win a championship again, finally, what that would do for state in in the state of North Carolina and around the region nationally too, just to be able to say, hey, we knocked off Clemson. We almost did it a few years ago with the missed field goal and going in overtime. We almost did, and it was I would say the answer is no. I don't think you have to, but man, you have to shoot for it as hard as you can.
Well, because the biggest reason why I brought that up is because I know a lot of fans really talk about, like, as great as last season was, and as many great things that you saw that you haven't seen from a lot of state football teams in quite some time. What's kind of the next step, and can Doran continue that upward trajectory? So that's kind of like, for me, what kind of brought to my mind of, getting 10 wins would be great, but we want to go towards the ACC title. So absolutely.
What do you think, Leighton? Do they have to do it? I mean, you can't just get off.
I think we know the answer by Leighton's question.
So for me, I would say we need to get past that Clemson hurdle.
So
within again, we're saying 5 years or so. I think we need to get over that. Just because of the fact that, again, at some point it has to happen. Truly, if our goal is one pack, one goal, and that one goal being a championship, we need to get over that Clemson hurdle. And Doran can't be going into year like 15 and hasn't gotten over that yet. You know what I mean? That's kind of my opinion on it. Because again, he came in one pack, one goal. So okay, you said that. So we got to get to that. We got to get there. And it's tough, but again, because I'm passionate about that, because I feel like he's right there. He's right there. He's really made that upward trajectory. So he's right there. So that's kind of my viewpoint on it. But again, if we see next year 9, even 10 wins, especially just like you said, with the team that we have coming back, and not necessarily saying we have to beat Clemson next year, but I'm saying, if we give them run for their money, if we give UNC a run for the money, I think that would be another big measuring step as well, with UNC having Sam Howell come back. That would be great.
We can get into that conversation all day long.
Yeah. So so that's kind of my viewpoint on it.
And making, just to your point, last ACC championship at NC State, 1979. So this fall would be 42 years.
Yeah, and State. Like I said, State's been perceived as a very solid football program. They're not. I wouldn't say anything. They're a great program, but I think they're very solid, very respectable. I would say in some regard, I think we've not really done a ton. We've not really done a ton with it. We've won some bowl games. Yeah, we've got some really good draft picks, some guys who are excelling in the NFL. But people look at that Bradley Chubb team, the Naeem Hines team. How did y'all not win with that team, kind of thing? Or how did y'all not win? It's like, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. But it's my thing is just the anticipation of, man, when it'll happen again. It'll happen again. It's a matter of when. I don't know how long it'll be, but when it happens, my thing is the anticipation of what that will do for State.
Absolutely.
As far as a program, I feel like we've already got a lot going for us, and a lot of people do respect State. Maybe not to the degree that they do Clemson or whoever else, but just imagine what that could do for the program, just like a slingshot, I feel like.
So now transitioning to basketball. So this is one I wanted to kind of jump in on that I kind of mentioned making, that I wanted to kind of throw to you, Justin, but I'm going to kind of make it a little bit bigger. So Darian Sebron, Manny Bates, Cam Hayes, and Shaquille Moore were very impressive this season. If they can stay away from injuries, at least one of them should be in the conversation for first team All ACC before they leave NC State.
That's tough, because it's like you don't know what the other talent's going to be in the league. Look at how many transfers are going on. Just look at Chapel Hill right now. You've got a big competitor with Walker Kessler wanting to put his name out there in the transfer market. That was the news this morning. I'll say true, though, for the sake of being optimistic. And the guy I would circle would be Manny Bates. You just look at his development from 2019-20 to this season. The guy, when he was a redshirt freshman, let's face it, he didn't have an offensive game. He was, at best a wide open dunker in the rim. He was a rim runner. He's shot blocker. The shot blocking's always been there. The athleticism's always been there, but he puts 25, 30 pounds of muscle on his body this year, develops an offensive game, close to a double-figure scorer this year. We'll see how he does the rest of the way in the NIT. He could finish as a double-figure scorer this year. His efficiency numbers have gone up tremendously. He's become a better defender as well. I know a lot of people get wowed by the shot blocking ability, but actually when NC State's playing good defense, he's not going to have 6 or 7 blocks in a game, because that means, the opposing guards or the opposing team's perimeter players are getting to the rim, and Manny can block all the shots in the world he wants, but when you get to the rim, that's a high efficiency shot for any team in the country.
Yep.
So Manny Bates would be that guy to me, because if he can continue developing the offensive game, you see his numbers take the same trajectory as they did from his redshirt freshman season to his redshirt sophomore season. And keep in mind, the guy's got 3 years of eligibility left. But if he keeps up his upward trajectory going, I mean, I don't know if he's going to be a 3-year guy, because he might have pro scouts knocking on his door.
I'm thinking that too. If he were to go if he were to ascend the same way he did this last season to this season, he may not be around for 3 years. He might be around for like 1, maybe 2. But my guess to that question was earlier I said I said no. I thought it might be like a second team, because saying you're one of the top 5 best players in the ACC is a lot. But that's awesome. I would love to see that for Manny Bates.
It's tough. It's tough.
Well, and that's why too I said conversation, not necessarily they are going to be. But
in the conversation,
I mean, are they going to be there? I mean, I know me and Macon, we love Darian Sebron. I mean, that guy's, just been amazing in terms of not only have on the, as like a guard big man combo kind of deal. He can run it, but he can dunk it and he can post it. He can do it all. So, yeah,
he just needs a pull up jump shot. I feel like if he can develop a jump shot, I think he's already tough to guard, but he would be much more tough to guard in that regard, that aspect for me.
Sebron might have the highest ceiling of all of them, just because of his physical assets and his length. The guy's the guy's probably the best athlete on the team, and that's tough to do when you're playing alongside Manny Bates and Shaquille Moore.
Yep.
But yeah, the shooting is definitely something that we'll need to develop. He's still got a long ways to go before he's an all ACC type talent, and first team all at that. I still think the shot is long for Manny Bates to go to a first team all ACC player as soon as maybe next season. But the guy finished 3rd in defensive player of the year in the ACC. I thought he was a snub. He finished 2nd in voting for the all defensive team. He should have been on it last year. He had the most blocks among freshmen last year. He led the ACC again this year in block shots. The defensive game is there. So, yeah, keep up the offensive development. And he would be the guy to circle. And we'll see how much volume Jericho Helms gets, too, because keep in mind, he was a guy that was the honorable mention All-ACC representative for the Wolfpack on this year's squad. So, he's a guy that I could definitely see being 2nd, 3rd team All-ACC if he keeps up his efficiency. He's become a really good three-point shooter. I tweeted out last week during the NIT game. You look at his year-by-year stats. He came in, and he was a great three-point shooter in high school, by the way, at Chaminade High School out of St. Louis, where Bradley Beal and Jason Tatum played. So, he's in good company there. Yeah. But he came in as a sharpshooter. He shot 31% or something his first season with the Wolfpack, went up to 34% last year, shot about 100 threes, though, so the volume was much higher. His volume has taken a step back this year, but he's close to about a 40% three-point shooter this year, and he's leading the team in three-point efficiency. So, that trajectory, he could be, an all-ACC candidate once again next year.
Absolutely.
Point too.
So we still rolling? Everything's still good? Sweetness. Yeah. No complaint here. So cool. So we'll kind of finish out one more question, and then we'll close it out. All right. So I'm rolling. Here we go. All right. So then to really finish up, so one more basketball question for you guys. Or again, another statement. So Devin Daniels will return next season with hopefully 1 or 2 transfer big men to lead Kevin Keats to his best season at NC State so far.
It's a loaded question, man. There's like 4 or 5 what ifs in there.
Well, A, B, C, D, E, and F happened.
Okay.
Maybe.
All of those things happening, false. I'm gonna say false right off the bat. There's 3 seniors that have an opportunity to come back next season. I would put money on 0 of them coming back. Now, that's not to say that we could get a surprise. One could come back. I think DJ Funderburk is definitely gone.
Yeah.
He's a guy that could go to Europe and play and start making money immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I think Braxton Beverly, he could make a little bit more sense from he's not necessarily a pro stock guy. He could still go to Europe and still make some money right away. He's already expressed an interest that he might want to get into coaching. That's an angle that I would, look at. That might be something that could work out for him. He also just turned 24 years old before the ACC tournament. I mean, he's an old guy compared to some of these guys like, Cam Hayes, Shaquille Moore, 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
He's been in college for a long time. His body's beat up. I mean, you got to remember last year, he couldn't even sit on the bench because he had such a torn up back, and, he had his little hip ordeal and the Duke game. And, he wasn't even able to practice for most of the rest of the year. He just showed up in games and played. And I really liked the role that he played off of the bench down the stretch in the season. I think now that he's in the NIT, he kind of deserves that respect to start, in his last few games in a Wolfpack jersey. But, Braxton Beverly, I think he's ready to move on. I think Funderburk's ready to move on. It's interesting that you say Devin Daniels, because I'd say he's the guy that might have the most to gain from coming back from a year because of, what he left on the table with that ACL tear. Again, He's another older guy. He's been around the block. He's been a college basketball player for the past 5 years. He was a transfer from Utah. He's been around the country. His hometown's Michigan. He played prep ball in California. I mean, the journey has taken him a long ways, and he's really close with this program. Keats and this program have taken really good care of him even after the ACL tear. And it seems like the morale is great. The relationship is great. I think it's more just a matter of, is he ready to move on with his life? I still think that there's enough tape that, ACL injury or not, with modern medicine, that's a pretty, repairable type of injury. It's a long rehab process, but it's a repairable injury. Will he lose a little bit of explosion? It's possible. But not to say, if you had the option to stay for a 5th or 6th year of college, or you could go to some European country and go make $500,000 in a year and start
hard to
building up
say
your
no
bank
to that.
account. I think, all of us here are Wolfpack alums, I assume, but, sometimes you gotta take care of the family. Sometimes you gotta put some money in your account. So, look, I think the odds are low for all 3 of those guys returning. Devin has the most sense because I don't know what his personal goals are. If he wants to be an NBA guy, he's going to need a little bit more tape. He's going to need to show that he's going to have that explosiveness post ACL tear. But if he's ready to go on, make some money, I think that's the more likely scenario.
Yep.
As for the transfers, NC State's in the transfer market. We'll see what they go out and get. Early on in the 2021 recruiting process, they were going after bigs. They looked at Jonas Idu. They looked at, he's going to Marquette. They looked at Roosevelt Wheeler. I know he's going to, I think, Kansas or Louisville, one of the Adidas schools.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, those were, 4-star big guys. That seemed to be the glaring need with Funderburk out the door. But really, I think, even with Daniels going out, Funderburk going out, you got a nice little base down there in the front court with Bates and Helms, at least for next year. And, guys like Jalen Gibson developing, waiting in the wings, E.B. Duana. We'll see what the future holds for them. I think their most glaring need is going to get a taller guard, like a 6'5" at minimum guard, up to 6'7", 6'8", that can play from the perimeter. Darion Sebron is nice. It's nice that you have that one piece. But other than that, you look at this guard rotation, it's a stacked room of guards. You got Terquavion Smith and Breon Pass coming next year. Ernest Ross was a guy I forgot. He's another guy that's probably going to contribute pretty quickly in that front court as the highest touted of this 2021 class. But Cam Hayes is the tallest at 6'3". And, you saw how the results looked early on in ACC play, going out with a small lineup with, 3 guards, 6'3" or shorter. Yeah. Braxton Beverly might not even be 6 foot. I know he's listed at 6 foot, but if we're being honest.
Yeah.
So with all that said, go get a piece that can create from the wing. I like the transfer market. I like going to get a guy with some experience, a guy that shows that he can be a volume scorer at the college level. We'll see. There's a lot of talent in the transfer market this year. So that's what I would go. If I'm Keats and that staff, and I know they're already doing this, but I would put all my attention in the transfer market, see who you can get.
Yeah. I I know a few people have talked about that. They're like, oh, he's a terrible coach, blah, 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 blah. And they're usually the glass half empty State fans anyways.
Yeah.
Like the world's always, we suck. We might as well suck,
Yeah.
Terribly.
Yeah.
But to me, my one thing with Keats is I totally agree. I totally agree with you. I think, every program in the country wants a stud. We win right now, win championships right now, coach, year 1, 2. Who doesn't want that?
Mm-hmm.
And every single program is looking for that unicorn coach, if you will. Get what I'm saying? It's just like he's out there somewhere. We got to find him, and we're going to be the next school.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at Tony Bennett, you look at Leonard Hamilton, Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, Jim Boeheim. We could go on the list just in the ACC, and that's they're got some pretty dominant programs. I think people would say right now, and they're probably in. I don't know who's been there the least. Tony Bennett, Leonard Hamilton, like 8, 9 years, maybe more than that, maybe 10. It's just I think we need to give more time. But my only thing I feel like when you look at there's some evidence there of reasons for concern, and I was talking about this in one of our last episodes we did. I think if you generally got if you got like a survey to state fans everywhere, I think you would generally get a survey, whether right or wrong, that Dave Doeren is quote unquote not a great coach, and Kevin Keats quote unquote or not a good coach, and Keats is a good coach. I think people think that, and I think people think that because Keats has had the bigger wins, so to speak. Now Doeren he's beaten like the Louisville, he's beaten Carolina multiple times on the road, but he hasn't he's beaten Florida State on the road. But I think that first year or two when Keats was really beating some ranked teams he probably shouldn't have, or he did. I think that really got a taste in people's mouths that like, oh, Keats is a good coach, and I personally think he is a good coach. So let me just get that right. I think he's a good coach, and I think we need to stick with him. But when you look at the trajectory for Doeren, minus the 2019 season or last 2 seasons ago, it's gone up. And if you look at Keats, his best season was year 1 so far, and everything's kind of plateaued right now, relatively speaking. But it hasn't gone up, and Doeren's kind of has, and Keats kind of hasn't. I don't know what you think about that, Justin.
Yeah, well, to the point about the fan perspective on maybe there's some out there that would say Keats is a good coach, but Doeren isn't. Yeah, I would honestly grade them on similar scales. I think they're both, B to B plus coaches. They're not, Hall of Famers. They got a lot of work to do for that. Yeah. They're not, the top 10 coaches in the country. But guess what? The 10, you can probably name the 10 programs that are going to get the 10 best coaches in the country, unless you just got a diamond in the rough and you happen to find one in the coming years. And guess what? You're going to lose them to one of those programs by the time he gets some success.
Or unless they just want to stick around and just be like, I'm going to put my foot in the ground. This is going to be my school kind of thing.
Yeah. Sure. And there's not many of those left, because when you can quintuple your salary somewhere else, all of a sudden that new area sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Money talks.
But to the point about the fan perspective, I think that's a personality thing. I mean, Keats is a really charismatic guy. He's phenomenal with the media. He's just smooth. Doeren's just more reserved. Doeren's more of a, laid back guy. But both of them really connect to their players on a very deep level, when the cameras are away, when the fans are away. And they're different people when the cameras are away and the fans are away too. So I think Keats maybe just plays the game a little bit more. And Doeren has kind of played the game a little bit more in this past year. He brought on the Krispy Kreme donuts on the ACC network thing, and that was
awesome.
That was, I put that in the top 5 Doeren moment immediately.
Easily.
But Doeren in 2015 is not doing that. And so and another thing about both of these coaches are young coaches.
Yeah.
I don't have their ages right in front of me, but I believe both of them are in their 40s, if not early 50s. Yeah. You compare that to the scale of head coaches, that you talk about that are the top 10 coaches in the country. Most of them are probably 60 and up. So these guys are still learning as well, and they're humans. And so there's a learning curve to that. About the trajectory of the programs, I mean, I think football and basketball, it's kind of apples and oranges. Basketball is more volatile. I mean, just look at, the Final Four every year. It's probably a different Final Four every single season, with the exception of some of the Blue Bloods. But even the Blue Bloods have had their problems in recent years. You look at football, you look at the college football playoff the past 7-8 years, there's probably about 6 or 7 different names total that you're going to find on that list.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the growth, I mean, again, I'd give it some more time with the basketball program. The football program is showing sustainability. And I think that's what you want if you're NC State. Eventually you want sustainable success. And I think football's heading in that direction, if not is already there. And I think basketball's heading in that direction as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, to kind of finish your point too, I mean, it's, because, I kind of specifically kind of pointed out too, I mean, yeah, you kind of say like, there's certain people that, I mean, there's always going to be haters, especially, I mean, because I know for me specifically, it's been very entertaining to see like UNC fans, call for Roy Williams' head or, them talking about getting rid of Coach K. It's like, okay, now, come on now. Seriously. I mean, that they are going to leave when they want to leave, but you also know they're going to leave at the right time too. They're not going to just take the programs into the ground. They're going to leave when they feel that they cannot bring any more to the program than they already are. So yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of the same thing and same thing for us as well. So yeah, well, thank you so much again, Justin. Really appreciate your time. Really Justin, appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So
thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. My pleasure. Or our pleasure. Sorry. Yeah. So with
this
that,
ain't Chick-fil-A, Leighton.
Yeah.
So with that being said, Wolfpack Nation, thank you so much again for tuning in again. Please make sure to subscribe to us by clicking the button in the bottom right-hand corner. Please like this video and check out our other content. And with that being said, as always, Wolfpack Nation, go Pack.